Hey there, welcome back. It's Louisa Munson, and this is the Lessons from Venus series, and I am endeavouring to record 40 different modules, 40 different bits of information about how to see the love coding in your chart, how to see whether somebody is looking for a relationship or not, all sorts of different factors that I'm going to be covering over this whole Venus retrograde in Leo period in 2023. So in the last two episodes, I've been looking at charts of people who have sort of diagnosed themselves or asserted that they are absolutely bachelors or bachelorettes for life, and also looked at the chart of somebody whose friends and family had said, "Oh, you're undateable," or are you ever going to settle down? You know when people pressure you, why haven't you settled down yet? And it becomes a bit of a thing. So in the last two episodes, I was looking at different aspects within charts of people who have decided that they don't want to settle down, and pointing out some of the things that I observe in them. Now, I've been very, very clear to share right from word go that I don't think any chart is completely undateable. I don't think any chart has no chance of love. I think every chart can be loving and lovable and can choose relationships should they wish to. One of the things I've noticed often in those charts is because of their makeup that maybe they have a very tough T-square formation or a grand square formation, especially involving the outer planets, because where the outer planets are involved, especially if the sun and the moon are also involved, or an angle is involved in one of your setups in your birth chart, as the moon goes around every month, and also Mercury whizzes around every year, and the sun, and so on and so forth, you can have very up-down experiences. And so one of the things I've noticed with the charts of people who maybe don't settle down into one relationship is that they might just have more dramatic charts. They have charts where things are happening, things are occurring. But, I see a lot of charts, and that is not necessarily the experience for everyone. There are also some highly motivated people that have very up and down charts, and also not highly motivated people, but who have very up and down charts, who still manage to have a relationship or choose to be in a relationship. So I actually think it boils down to what we're wanting in this lifetime. Some people are wanting relationships whereby they can settle. Others are wanting relationships that absolutely set their world alight. And I think if we can get to the bottom of the chart and get to the real sort of purpose of what this person's looking for, that gives us many more clues as to whether we're going to be like happily ever after or not. Now, what I've done in this lesson is I've brought up the charts of I think 4 or 5 different people who have been married their entire adult lives, bar one, and one of them has been married for well over 20 years. So these are people who have experienced this kind of teenage love, this forever love, and once they're in it, that's it, they're hooked. So is there something that maybe defines their charts? Let's find out now. One thing I have had as a bit of a subtitle here for this show is watch the angles. Let's look at the angles. So I'm going to introduce the idea of what is ruling the most important angles in your chart in terms of relationships. So let's see how they also play into dating and love and all that jazz. So let's bring this up now. Okie dokes. So the first chart I'm looking at, which you can see here, it's got cardinal angles. So these are known as the angles, and they're in cardinal signs. So Venus, Capricorn, Aries, and Cancer. The cardinal signs are real doer signs. So this person's got quite doing energy, but they've also got a good balance and spread of planets and elements. So it's a less dramatic chart. There's less big clumpings of planets, which can create a really, really strong effect coming into the life that gets repeated again and again and again. This person is a lot more balanced and possibly more even tempered in their expectations and what they're wanting out of life. So that's the first thing. And this person has been in a relationship the whole of their adult life. Now, so she's got cardinals. She's a doer. She's also got Libra and Ascendant. So she's beautiful as well. Now, Libra, the signs of Libra and Taurus show up quite a bit in these examples I'm going to show you, just so you're really clear. Both the sign of Libra and Taurus are ruled by Venus, and Venus is the planet of love. So, we kind of would expect that, actually. So just pointing it out, this person has Libra rising or ascendant, and her sun is also in the sign of Taurus. So Venus is pretty important. So Venus is the ruler of her chart. Now, this is the descendant. This is the ruler of her partners, and it's in the sign of Aries, and Aries is ruled by Mars. And look here, we've got her Venus and her Mars are in a really tight conjunction of less than 1 degree in the 7th house of relationships. So it's almost like this chart is absolutely written for that kind of romantic love where girl meets boy and they stay happily ever after, married forever. It's a very much, it's like, so let's see if there's anything else that I wanted to point out, because I also think the ruler of the home is also important. So the angle here, the IC, is known as the angle to do with the house, the home, and I guess the family as well. Now, the ruler of that is in the sign of Saturn. And you'll see here that Saturn is also trine Mars, and it's also trine Venus. So Saturn, the ruler of the home, is trine both of these rulers. So this looks really quite beneficial. The girl meets boy, and it just so happens that they are able to create a home together that works really well for them. And I would also say that her sun is also in an exact sextile to her moon. And the sun in Taurus is very sort of love and partnership oriented, and the moon in Pisces is very soft and compassionate. So again, this person has got a chart absolutely kind of written for collaboration, written for some kind of relationship that is ongoing. This is really soft and beautiful and also strong. I mean, this person's also got Pluto in the 1st house. That is a strong aspect, and she has got like an opposition between Pluto to her Mars and her Venus, which will play out. But just like looking at the signs and the qualities and the spread, and then the rulers of these angles, there's a lot of good and easy stuff to work with here. So that's my first forever love chart. Let's have a look at another. So again, this is another one. Funnily enough, with Venus, like a Venus ruler to the ascendant. This person has also got Libra rising, and this one takes responsibility very well. You've got all her angles are in the cardinal signs again. So again, it's somebody else who is a bit of a doer, who gets things done. And her angles are all at 0 degrees in the cardinal signs. These are very, very specific degrees, and they relate to the spring equinox, the summer solstice, the autumn equinox, and the winter solstice. So they're very, very strong points astrologically, and often show up in the lives of people who have quite catalytic lives, where there's some really deep change coming to the family matrix. And that is definitely true of this person as well, especially with her Pluto right on the ascendant. But, in the other episode, I was sharing that often when Pluto is in a hard aspect to the moon and the personal planets and angles, it can create such an aversion to being in a relationship because you're reminded of trauma. And obviously every time the moon goes past any of these angles, there is a Pluto moon reaction, which can be quite catalyzing. However, this person's also got a lot of peaceful parts to her chart, and also has these very, very strong and useful trines, including this trine from the Sun to Uranus and Jupiter. This is quite an optimistic person, even though this person has also got the sun in a conjunction to Saturn. Sun conjunct Saturn can be a little bit practical, and also sometimes a little bit I don't want to say negative, but they almost don't have high expectations, or they can do, but they can set their expectations quite well. They get on with things, they do things. Actually, I mean, the sun and Saturn, sorry, I saw them very close there and said they were in a conjunction. They're not, they're just very close to each other. They're just out of conjunction. But we've got Mercury conjunct Venus here, which is practical and friendly, really practical and friendly. So this person is actually quite brotherly and sisterly, so she has brotherly and sisterly relationships. And also her Venus and her Mercury are in a very sort of brotherly and sisterly connection with Uranus. Like Uranus is very brotherly and sisterly. It's not so much about romantic love or sexual love. It's more friendship based. So there's a very, very strong sort of friendship, a very sort of practical, a practicality to her. Now let's have a look at some of her angles then. So she's got Pluto on the ascendant, which is very, very strong. And this person has been really challenged a lot. But is also very committed with her, her sun, her Saturn, her Venus and her Saturn are together, and also Mercury and Saturn are together. So this person can really put plans into action, and really, she absolutely achieves everything that she sets her mind to. She's, like I said, she's a doer. She absolutely gets things done. Now, her chart ruler is Venus, which is here. And it's conjunct the ruler of the fourth, which is Saturn. So yeah, her Venus and her Saturn, that's the ruler of her chart and the ruler of her home are working together. So that's another indication of where a person and a home are working together. Now, her seventh house is traditionally ruled by Mars. And this is quite interesting because Mars is in a square aspect to her Venus, and is in a square aspect to her Saturn. And it's kind of funny, actually, because in her world, she gets everything done, and she does a lot for the whole family, and her husband is almost antithetical to it. There's obviously a lot of love and a lot of friendship there, and they do lots of great stuff together, and yet it's like she has to keep everything in track. And I think that really accounts for this. How the angle to do with her forever husband is absolutely shown up as in a little bit, it can be, he can create a few inconveniences, but there's definitely a very, very strong bond. And, the last thing I would say, she's got a lot in her ninth house, which makes her very, very tolerant. And she's got a lot in Gemini, which is quite airy. And they have quite a good level of tolerance. Her moon right at the top of the chart is also very, very compassionate and reaches out to help. So, this person has got a high level of responsibility, a high level of accountability, and a high level of tolerance and compassion. And yeah, so that's, I just wanted to put it out there that people with even strong, like T-squares like this, they can still find that forever love. Now, my next example is somebody, so we've got slightly different angles this time, because like the last two both had their angles, their ascendant in the sign of Libra. Now, this person has got a fixed ascendant and a fixed descendant. I'm not surprised by the descendant being in the sign of Taurus. That shows up in the charts of people who really like stable partners and who attract stable partners in. So people with Scorpio rising, they tend to attract stability in the form of partners. Now, she has got some very strong oppositions and angles going on there. Her Chiron, for instance, is in a square. Wow. So I think that's actually slightly out of square, but it's calculated as being in a square. She's got Pluto and the moon together, which is really, really strong and doesn't always work out. It creates massive levels of loyalty. And I guess, with the right partner, that will be fulfilled very well. And she's got Jupiter and Mercury together, which can make, the need for conversations and talking very, very important. So it's interesting, she's got a lot of a need to talk with her Venus and a Jupiter and her Mercury in the third house. She's actually got a lot of siblings, this person, and siblings show up in the third house, and she's got Venus and Jupiter, to benefics showing abundance, and she's got Mercury there, so that's definitely something you see with a lot of siblings, or can see with a lot of siblings. The 11th house is all about friends and networks and things. So as I look at her descendant, which is ruled by Venus, and her home, which is ruled, there's actually a couple of rulers for her home. There's Jupiter, which is here, and also Neptune, which is up here, just there in the 11th house. And then this person's ascendant, like Mars has got two rulers. Scorpio's got two rulers. It's got Mars, and it's also got Pluto. So her Jupiter, the ruler of this area, is connected to Mars. So it's like these two angles connecting. Both of the rulers of the angle to do with the home are in a connection. And then Pluto, her other ruler of her chart, is in opposition to Jupiter. So it's like her personality and her home are really quite strong. And then Venus, Venus actually isn't aspecting Mars and Neptune here. However, she's in the same area, like she's in the same sign as one of the rulers for the angle to do with the home, and she's also in the same house, which I think is kind of interesting. There's a little bit of a resonance there. So yeah, this is an interesting chart, and this person has been married for well over 50 years or so. She's in a very, very strong and long-lasting relationship, and I put a lot of this down to these fixed angles, and also, where she's got these strong oppositions, she's got this sort of helpful and healing interest to heal the things that aren't quite right. So it's like healing things coming up. And Mars and Neptune are connected to Chiron, which is very healing. So, this person's got an interest in healing and getting things sorted. I think something else that also stands her in very good stead in terms of a relationship is that her mutable, like her angle to do with the home, is in a mutable sign. So we've got fixed energies here to represent her and her husband, who, prefer to be down well-worn pathways. And she needs to keep it quite flexible at home. Her sun is at home, and it's in a conjunction with Vesta, which is very much about what is sacred to her. So having the sun in the fourth, is showing this feeling of safety at home. And then the ruler of the seventh, which is Venus, she has got good aspects. So even though Venus isn't connected to the other rulers, Venus has got really good aspects to the North Node, and also Juno, and also the South Node, and also the North Node. So Venus is very well placed. In fact, she hasn't got any bad aspects. So I think that is pretty worth considering. And then finally, like the ruler of the fourth and the IC, which is Jupiter and Neptune, again, whilst they're not connecting to Venus, they still have quite interesting aspects, and they're both in the third and the 11th. So this is a relationship this is a person who has found themselves in a long-term relationship because of a preference for stability, a preference for also being flexible when you can't be stable, and also a need to talk and share, and also have friendships around. So this is a very sort of friendly person, a sort of reliable and friendly person, and that really reflects in the reliable and friendly marriage. I I've got one more, and then I want to look at the chart of the person who, was wondering if, she'll ever, meet somebody or settle down. Okay, so this last one actually belongs to a man that I know who has been married for well over 20 years. Again, you've got these fixed angles here on the ascendant and the descendant. The ruler of the descendant, which is about love, is Uranus. Now, Uranus and Aquarius descendant aren't always, not everyone would associate that with a stable, happy home or a long-term relationship, because Aquarius is a sign that needs a lot of freedom and a lot of autonomy and a lot of independence. And Uranus is, as a ruling planet, is a planet that likes change. However, it also highly values truth and spirituality. So this person, I think, is really looking for a relationship or a marriage that feels quite philanthropic and kind, and like it's on a spiritual or ethical direction. This person's ruling planet is the sun, because Leo is ruled by the sun. So it's interesting. So a bit like the previous chart, the two rulers, the ascendant and the descendant, they weren't actually aspecting together. They weren't actually in a connection, but they were in the same house and the same sign. This one, they're both in the same house. So you've got Uranus here and the sun here. Again, we've got another reference to Taurus here. The sun is in Taurus, which is a very strong sign. So the sun and moon are fixed and in Taurus. Look, there's the moon, also in Taurus. Venus is in the 10th house as well. Now, this is interesting because Venus is the ruler of the home, because Libra is ruled by the home. So we've got the sun, we've got the moon, we've got Venus, and also we've got the ruler of the 7th house, all in the 10th house. So it's like, this I think is very much like the 10th house is the direction we're going in, and what we're grateful for, what we're known for, what our reputation is for, and a little bit about the sort of destiny or karma that we've got. So this person is really bringing their personality, their relationship, and their home and their psyche is all kind of wrapped into one. And so this is, why this person has such a beautiful relationship right now. Yes, and the Venus is also very well placed. Like his Venus is in a conjunction with the moon. It's also in a lovely sextile with Pluto and also Mars. It's also got this lovely connection with Chiron to do with healing. So there's quite a bit in the 3rd house emphasized as well, which is good. Interesting, this is the 3rd person that's got Pluto around the ascendant. The other two that we looked at that had Pluto near the ascendants, they were both in the 1st house. This is Pluto in the 12th house. And funnily enough, the last one I looked at had Pluto not far from the midheaven. So maybe, I hadn't even noticed this before, but maybe an angular, what I mean by an angular, like a Pluto around the angles, might actually be beneficial in relationships. It certainly causes a feeling of fatedness in life. Let's see if I've put any other comments. Yes, strong outers and challenging inners. So this person, their outer planets aren't really in desperately difficult connections. However, this person's got quite challenging connections. Like Mercury here is in opposition to Jupiter and Juno, and to Pallas Athena. So we've got one slightly challenging one here, which is like the sun to Pluto in the ascendant. That's definitely challenging. Sun square Mars is challenging, but it's definitely not something that would prevent a relationship, not at all. So this person's challenging aspects aren't really fixed between the outer planets, which I think is quite useful. So that's quite a few different charts of people in forever relationships. So I'm just bringing us back to my not so undateable chart. Not, because this person thought they, or was wondering, will I ever settle down? And, when I spoke with them, they did, in a conversation we shared, there was a hope to meet somebody, and that hadn't happened. And I think people, they get very comfortable in their own space, and they enjoy their life, and they do really great things. Now, I think I mentioned in my last video that this person's chart is also, this person is also born on the same day as one of my clients who is preferring not to be in a relationship and also hasn't been in a relationship for a long time. Now, one of the things that I did notice, if I was to go back and do a comparison to my other two videos, there was a lot in Sagittarius that came up. So a mutability, you know, where people are wanting more freedom and more choice, and less of the fixedness. So this person, you know, their ascendant is in a mutable sign. In fact, all of the angles are in mutable signs, showing a certain need to be quite flexible, to be able to go here and there and to move around and to have choice. Choice is really, really important. And this person is also born with the sun and the moon in the sign of Sagittarius. Again, mutable signs. Her Venus is also in the sign of Sagittarius. Again, a mutable sign. She's also got Pluto and Uranus in Virgo, and also Chiron and Saturn. You know, mostly her planets are in mutable signs. So there's not a very good spread here. You know, and like I said yesterday in episode 2 of this series, when the moon goes over this point and this point and this point and this point, it's going to trigger a lot of emotions for her, because it's activating all of these oppositions and squares between, you know, 6 major planets and 1-2 angles. It's a huge thing to go through. However, does that mean she'll never meet somebody? Well, I would say no, because let's have a look. I mean, let's apply the rulers here. So her ruler of her first is Jupiter and or Neptune. So where is her Neptune? Well, her Neptune's in the 9th house. Her Jupiter's in the 5th house, which is about creativity and following her dreams. But Neptune is in the 9th house to do with travel and expansion and adventure. Then the ruler of her 4th house and the ruler of her 7th house are both Mercury. And look, there's her Mercury here, also in the 9th house and in a conjunction with Neptune. So the 1st, 4th and 7th are all in a lovely conjunction, which I've seen in all the other charts of people who have had their forever partner around them. And then the moon is also in this as well. So what is the 9th house about? You know, the 9th house is about expansion. It's about adventure. It's also about spirituality. It's also about lifelong learning. It's about seeing life from a whole new perspective. And it often shows up heavily in the charts of people who migrate, who live away from home, who move around a lot, and who have adventure and other destinations as part of their life. I mean, that is also a very, very strong theme for Sagittarians. And it's kind of interesting that, you know, she's got all of this up here, very, very close to Sagittarius. You know, she's got a lot of Sagittarius in her 9th house. So, you know, to me, this fascinates me. And what I really think is it's likely to all fall into place when she's in the right place. It might just be that she hasn't found herself in the right place yet, and that as she moves around, bang, boom, there it is, you know, that she meets the right person. I also think that people with, you know, the 7th house ruler, the 1st house ruler, the 4th house ruler in the 9th house, I often think that this has something to do with having a foreign partner. You know, that you meet somebody from a different culture, a different background, a different country, different language, different religion. You know, their partners bring them into a whole new, a whole new experience. Everything that is not familiar. So she needs to be in a place where she's unfamiliar, and that brings more of that love energy to her. Also, the ruler of the 9th is Pluto. And the ruler of the 12th house. It's interesting because the 12th house is often associated with settling somewhere for the rest of your life. So, for instance, the 12th house often shows where we come undone or where we might die, and our sort of hidden unconsciousness. It shows absolutely kind of like how we're ending ourselves. And so if you've got planets in the 12th house or your 12th house ruler is somehow connected to travel, you know, it could very well sort of indicate that, you know, she's going to end her day somewhere else. But she hasn't got anything in her 12th house, but her 12th house ruler, interestingly, is in the 7th house, and in a conjunction with the ruler of the 9th house. So, yeah, her 9th house ruler to do with being away, her 12th house ruler to settling somewhere potentially for the rest of her life. They're both together in the 7th house of relationships. So again, this could be meeting someone abroad, and living there with them. Also, Mercury, the ruler of her relationships and her home, is in a sextile to this conjunction between Uranus and Pluto in the 7th house. So again, there's another indication that she's more likely to meet someone when she's living abroad. So I hope that was helpful. Just to reiterate, your charts, you may well think that, like, there are loads of astrology books that will say if you're a Sagittarian, you're really not likely to want to settle down, and if you're a Taurus, you're so much more likely to, and this, that, and the other. And there are all these kind of rules, but I really think that as you look at somebody's birth chart and start to analyze it, you can always find different ways of understanding how love shows up. And so all it takes is a little bit of investigative astrology. It's a bit like being like a detective. It's detective work. You know, what kind of qualities is this person looking for in a partner? What kind of life do they want? And when you get to the key of that, it all seems to reveal itself. So there you go. I hope this was helpful. And, you know, even if astrology says you're not going to meet somebody, that could be a load of old piffle. So anyway, take care, lots of love, and catch you in another session soon. Bye for now.